On March the 1st, 2026, the world's most dangerous math problem got its first real numbers. US and Israel struck Tehran. Iran's supreme leader is dead. And in retaliation, Iran has turned the world's most important energy artery into what it calls a dead zone. Not a city or battlefield, a strait. And if that corridor stays closed, roughly 1/5 of the world's traded oil is suddenly trapped. But here's what most people get wrong. You won't feel that tomorrow. There's no instant blackout, no immediate rationing. Your car still starts, your lights stay on. The real danger moves slower. It flows from shipping lanes into oil futures, into gasoline prices, into grocery bills. And by the time it reaches your household, the war won't look like a headline. It will look like inflation. This isn't about battlefield updates. It's about the financial and political chain reaction that follows when a narrow corridor becomes unstable. If this disruption lasts weeks, markets spike. If it lasts months, governments scramble. And if it hardens into something structural, well, the consequences won't stay regional. They'll show up in your fuel bill and possibly at the ballot box. Now, to understand why, you must look at the map. The Strait of Hormuz is only 21 miles wide at its narrowest point, with the actual shipping lanes only 2 miles across. And through that strip of water flows around 20% of globally traded oil, plus a significant share of liquefied natural gas. Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Kuwait, Iraq, and Qatar. Most of their exports funnel through this one passage. If it closes completely, there is no equal substitute at scale. This isn't symbolic leverage, it's volume leverage. And oil markets don't need a total shutdown to react, they react to credible risk. So what about naval escorts? In every Hormuz crisis, the proposal resurfaces, US and allied warships guiding tankers through. On paper, that sounds stabilizing. In practice, it doesn't widen the strait, it doesn't increase throughput, and it doesn't remove missiles from the coastline. It concentrates assets. Tankers move slowly. They are enormous, difficult to maneuver, and highly visible. Naval escorts can intercept threats, but even one successful strike shifts insurance pricing overnight. Escorting may reduce successful attacks. It doesn't eliminate risk. And in global shipping, risk alone is enough to freeze movement. It raises a difficult question. Does escorting stabilize the corridor or militarize it in a way that increases escalation risk? Because once naval forces are regularly exchanging fire, miscalculation becomes more likely. Could producers bypass Hormuz instead? Well, partially. Saudi Arabia operates an east-west pipeline to the Red Sea. The UAE has a pipeline to Fujairah outside the Gulf, and these routes of course help, they relieve pressure. But combined, they cannot replace the full volume that normally transits Hormuz. There is no full replacement, not at that scale and not quickly. And even alternative routes carry geopolitical risk. Geography forced this choke point into existence, and geography hasn't changed. Then there's the risk to production itself. If export terminals, storage tanks, or processing facilities are struck, the disruption shifts from shipping delays to actual supply destruction. Energy infrastructure is large, fixed, and difficult to fully shield. Repairs can take weeks, sometimes months. Markets price expectations, not just physical shortages. So if traders believe outages could persist, prices rise long before any refinery runs dry. You won't see empty pumps first, you'll see higher prices. Now, widen the lens. Europe already absorbed a major energy shock after cutting reliance on Russian pipeline gas. That forced a costly pivot toward LNG and alternative suppliers. Now layer Gulf instability on top of that. Oil underpins transport, petrochemicals, agriculture. LNG cargoes from Qatar transit Hormuz. Europe has storage buffers, but buffers are seasonal. A short disruption in spring looks manageable. A prolonged disruption heading into winter, well, that feels very different. This isn't panic, it's structural exposure. And then there's the political clock. Oil prices feed into gasoline prices within weeks. Gasoline prices feed into consumer sentiment almost immediately. And consumer sentiment feeds into approval ratings. If pump prices spike and stay elevated, political pressure builds fast, especially in an election cycle. Strategic Petroleum Reserve releases can smooth short-term shocks, but reserves are finite. Repeated use reduces flexibility later. Presidents don't control global oil markets. They are judged as if they do. That creates incentives to stabilize prices quickly, diplomatically, militarily, or through production coordination. And whether that works depends on how long disruption lasts. So, when would you actually feel this? Well, historically, oil shocks move in phases. First, future markets react within hours or days. Second, refiners adjust crude purchasing patterns over weeks. Third, retail fuel prices rise, typically within 2 to 4 weeks, depending on inventories. And finally, broader inflation filters through over months. Higher shipping costs, airline tickets, food distribution costs. It's rarely immediate, it's cumulative. A brief spike creates volatility. A disruption lasting 3 to 6 months creates sustained inflationary pressure. If instability becomes prolonged or infrastructure damage persists, recession risk increases, especially in economies already grappling with higher interest rates or slow growth. That doesn't make it inevitable. Markets adapt, supply responds, diplomacy can de-escalate. But time is the multiplier. If Hormuz closes briefly and reopens quickly, well, this becomes another episode of turbulence. But if disruption stretches into months, inflation returns, and political pressure intensifies, if instability hardens into something structural, well, the shock moves from markets to households, and from households to governments. The global economy runs through narrow corridors. When one of them wobbles, the consequences don't stay regional. They move slowly at first, and then all at once. If you think this is just about the Strait, it's not. Another narrow corridor is already under pressure, quietly reshaping trade routes and insurance markets in real time. If you want to understand how these choke points connect, watch my breakdown of what's happening in the Red Sea next.